Hey guys, welcome to the Mindset Shifts community, the community to collaborate, share ideas and latest practices on human behavior, negotiation, leadership, and consulting. And today we're having this fascinating conversation with Brendan Krieger, who is a cybersecurity specialist and also a master host in negotiation practice community with over 50 sessions over the past years, where Brendan is actually helping people one-on-one and in the group case scenarios to cut better deals, to help them understand the communications in a better way and move their careers and lives forward. Brendan, would you like to say a few words about yourself and what is it that you do?
Yeah, I think for me, the fun thing about this was that negotiation, and getting into this was really an evolution, right? It's an evolution of discussions and kind of conversations. So for me, it was just a passion to be able to learn it from myself. And then as I learned it, I noticed that everyone around me was kind of like, but I'm not getting that communication. I'm not connecting properly. It just feels, that we're conflicting. How can I do that better? And I was like, oh, by the way, you should try this. And they come back and go, oh my God, what else? I have another situation. How can I do this? And it just evolved. And I think, for us and you've done this, Eugene, yourself, like in the community is, you just know that there's all these different situations and all these different skills you can learn and master, right, and keep learning from to be a better communicator. And for me, being in cybersecurity, being a podcaster, being a streamer, talking to so many people, it's about communications, about connecting with people.
Yeah, I mean, fascinating. And for you, Brendan, at what point in your life did you realize that you got to improve your communication skills? At which point in your life it became a priority?
Uh, a long time ago. I mean, I think when it came a priority is when I owned my own business, right? When I owned my own business, 2001, it was learning, like, and I started with Tony Robbins, right? About, what was it? His personal power two program, right? And how to communicate and how to connect with yourself and the other individuals and communicate. And I found his system was strategic, but there's always that gap of what actually do you say? Like, what's the words I need to say at that time? He had the strategy, but not the actual, implementation. So as I started to go, I was fumbling through and all that. And I think it was probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I came across Chris Voss. And then Chris Voss told you what to say, gave you kind of techniques. And then it just kind of elaborated and evolved from using those two. Plus, I did holistic lifestyle coaching. I did a lot of things, all these different areas coming together now is like, oh my God, now it's clicking. Now it's coming together. So I think it was really good. Like you said, it was the evolution of it, right? I knew it was important, when I owned my own business, because I had to make money and I had to be able to communicate properly. And when you work, you're an employee, it's so important too. But you have kind of, some sort of, comfortability with your employment and all that. And you can kind of, play it out. But when you have to make your own money, it's make or break, right? When you have to survive off what the deals are doing, it came really important to be able to communicate properly and understand, not even just communicate, but I'd be able to listen and then communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like active listening is one of the crucial components of every communication, and so many people get it wrong. It's really hard to grasp the idea of active listening when you actively listen, and there are actually certain component that goes in it. It's not like you are silent; you are actually dynamically silent, and you inquiring into the details, you exploring what is it that you're actually hearing, what is it that the other person is trying to convey to you. And especially in sales scenarios, that's becomes very apparent, because commonly salespeople always having the sales pitch or next things to say, or this is the script, how to overcome this objection, or how to move conversation this or that way. And in a lot of sales scenarios, the active listening part is actually negated or put aside, thinking
Mm-hmm.
that you kind of got to win this over. You gotta make or break deal, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
win, kind of a win-lose scenario going on. And with Chris Voss, like you said, when he laid out the concept of cognitive empathy, which is basically his way of, and he has his own tools and how he describes it, but it struck me as a cognitive empathy, and the way for him to describe some of the tools that he's using. It's all about active listening, and this is such a tremendous skill to practice, and having someone to give you feedback on your communication skills, and in the platform like negotiation practice community has been really instrumental in actually progressing forward and understanding your own roadblocks to to the next level, right? Is it something that holds you back, or something that you're miscommunicating that you weren't aware of at all? So that's actually very interesting, the development of these techniques, and also this the kind of certain communities springboarded from these ideas, and now we have this platform where you get to practice your social skills in a very congruent and a very coherent way, that helps you and not only yourself, but a lot of people who come to the session, practice with you, to get better. So
now I want to add something to that, because I mean, you talked about cognitive empathy, and I mean, I think Chris Voss calls it tactical empathy, right? And how you're kind of empathizing with the person versus sympathy, right? Empathy, of course, as we understand, as we're connecting with people, is to understand their point of view, their beliefs, what they're going in a logical manner. Sympathy is to emotionally, get engaged to it, right? And sometimes we can be consumed with that. So understanding how to connect in a way that you empathize, understand logically, like, wow, it sounds like it's a bad situation that you're going through because of X, Y, and Z. And then you kind of have a logical way of kind of processing that and asking good questions, where if you get into a sympathy, you can emotionally respond, you can be triggered yourself, there could be all different challenges, right? You can overwhelm the other person, right, because of your emotions in it. So it could become a harder conversation because now you're emotionally engaged, versus empathetic, where you're logically engaged and can ask good questions and really be focused on your counterpart, the person you're talking about. Like for me and you, really focused on you and how can I provide value to you, right? What can I do to help you versus what's in it for me? Oh my God, your unicorn was sick. My unicorn was sick. And oh my God, yeah, let me tell you how my unicorn was sick. And I overwhelmed the conversation with me, right? So
yeah, that's
using
all
that as an
about the
example.
emotional charge, and emotions are contagious.
For sure.
And the distance between, or the space between you reacting and responding is could be such a subtle shift, where you no longer react subconsciously, kind of a knee jerk reaction, but you also allow it to sit and have this space between your response, when you thought out the kind of answer you want to give, not only verbally, but also emotionally. That creates a space for everyone to process emotional dynamic in a better way, and the communication becomes, well, I call it high impact communications, is where both parties engaging in conversation, and emotions do not overpower the communications. The emotions are part of it, but the main job of the negotiator or communicator, and us being more responsible for this, because we consciously practice it. So I call it a extreme ownership, right? You have to own the conversation, right? And to own the conversation, you have to dismantle these emotional layers that are present, especially negative dynamics, to make sure that it's no longer a factor in this negotiator or this conversation. So only then you're able to move conversation forward. And a lot of people get stuck on actually engaging themselves in a fight or flight response, and fighting with the ideas, fighting with the certain outcomes that they would have in mind. And in essence, then it becomes a negotiation, not between two people, but at least four people, because you're running a thought in your head saying, oh, I want it to go this way. The other person is doing exactly the same. So how many people are actually in the conversation at any given time? At least four. And so it seems. And
Or
nowadays,
it could be more, right? I
it
mean,
could be more.
kind of adding that, it could be a trigger from someone else in your history, your mom, your dad, a coach, a boss, someone else, an ex, partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever that may be, could have said something. So now you're having the internal dialogue. Also, you're having that conversation that person said to you while I'm talking to, for example, Eugene, all in that one scenario, all in that one moment.
Yeah, and it all comes down to tension, stress, and resistance. Um, the way I like to describe it is the label resistance, because it's kind of a glue that holds everything together. if you're resisting certain ideas, if you're resisting, if the conversation doesn't go the way you want it to go, then it creates resistance because you're trying to achieve certain outcome and you're not getting there. So it creates this tension, and that could derail your conversation, your negotiations really quickly. Because then you lose your composure, you lose your posture, and you have to recalibrate your mind and the conversation in order to move it in the right direction and develop a long-term relationship rather than just one-time deal, and kind of force the conversation through.
I think
And
there's a
that brings
balance.
us to the yeah.
I think there's a balance of that. I think there's really a balance because you don't want to be, and this is where negotiation becomes a very unique dance, right? It has to be there has to be rhythm to it. There has to be flow. There has to be, each partner has to get, their part of the dance. And I'm using that as an analogy because everyone's seen someone dance. If someone's just sitting there and the other person's moving, they're not dancing, right? And vice versa, right? So you want to kind of go into negotiation with your expectation of what you kind of want out of the negotiation, and they're going to come in with it as well. And you have to find a unique way of dancing and communicating to be able to get a collaborative, opportunity to work with all decisions and get what you want both out of the deal, right? Out of that negotiation versus one wins, one loses, right? And if you're trying to be in that, this is why I want to clarify this. A lot of times people kind of go too far the other way. I want to be collaborative. I want to be empathetic. So they let the person get, their counterpart, the person they're talking to, get everything they want, and they walk away with nothing. But they say, at least that person feels happy. But did you get, what you needed out of the negotiation as well? And that's the sweet spot of it, is be able to communicate in a way to understand each other, but also get a collaborative decision that you come out both feeling good. Right. And I think that's where it takes a lot of practice to get in that you don't overwhelm, right? And come on, that I want everything and you're going to lose the partner, or the other side is, they're going to win because I want to have a good conversation. There has to be that balance.
I love the analogy of dance. I also like to describe it as a jazz, where you
Yeah.
kind of improvising on the spot, depending on the flow of the conversation, depending on the situation and so on. And just like in a dance, you gotta keep the conversation organized. You gotta have a certain dynamic. Otherwise, you're gonna stop on each other's toes and you're gonna have bruised feelings, right? So it is a dance in a sense. It's not a sales pitch. It's not a script that you use in a conversation. And of course, some of the negotiation schools that are out there are extremely powerful, and they give you outline of what to say. And in essence, you have to look at, sort of chew on it and internalize it, and then make it your own, because there's a really good guides out there. But if you keep using the scripts, it's going to make you feel like a robot. And if you feel kind of robotic and monotonic in your conversation, that's what your counterpart is going to feel, and it's just not pleasant. It's not how dance works, right?
Well, and I think, and we'll use the analogy of dance because a lot of people understand it. Yeah, when you first learn cha-cha, you merengue, whatever, ballroom dancing, it's not comfortable. It's awkward. You have to learn the steps. You have someone else there coaching you. It doesn't feel right. Right. These are the things that you're talking about. Like when you're learning these tools and ways to say things, they don't feel comfortable. They don't hit at the right time. The rhythm off, the sequence off, your timing's off, but it's practice. And then all of a sudden, when you get that practice and reputation, also now it starts to come together, like the dance starts to flow. And then now you learn the next technique and the next rhythm, right? And sometimes in dance, you learn like the first 4 steps, and then the next 4 steps, then the next 4 steps. Well, as you do that, as you get proficient in it, then now you can do all 16 steps all together. But it takes time and practice, and you have to be compassionate with yourself that you're not going to get it first run off the run. You're going to read a book or do this, and all of a sudden it's going to hit, and you're going to be in a mid stakes negotiation, not low stakes where you're negotiating like, hey, do we want to go see a movie tonight? It's not going to be low stakes. It's going to be mid stakes negotiation. It's going to be a little bit of pressure, and it's not going to work. Everything's not going to work out, and you're going to be like, oh, like this stuff doesn't work. It takes practice, it takes time, right?
it takes courage to do that too, and admit it, actually admitting it in the middle of conversation if something goes off or not as expected, and finding within yourself a courage to actually bring it to the table and saying like, it seems like I'm missing something here, or it looks like I'm screwing this up, like, please forgive me, right? And that takes courage, but also this vulnerability that you're kind of expressing, it could be a gateway to a long-term relationship and trust and certain optimism that you're building in the environment with your counterpart.
It also takes self-awareness, right? Self-awareness, compassion to yourself. Like if you get triggered, we all do. Sometimes we get negotiations, something kind of says something and we get triggered, then we go into the primal instincts, fight, fight, or freeze, right? We either kind of go, you don't know what to say. You're kind of like, oh my God, right? You just kind of, or go quiet, right? You flight, you kind of go, okay, I'm done. Like I'm out of this conversation. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Maybe you're angry or frustrated and you're like, I'm done. I don't want to talk about it more. Or you fight. Oh, well, you said this and I can't believe you told me that. And you're going very aggressive. Well, when you know that as a negotiator, it's our job to kind of breathe, take a step back and kind of go, okay, what just happened internally? Not, I mean, with the individual you're going, but what just happened? Like, what do I need to take a break, take a breather and kind of refocus and recollect myself, and then potentially even get back in or take a break and walk away and reset to come back in for another negotiation. Cause never for us, it's not that one negotiation. It's 5-10 different negotiations at different time frames and different, dates and times that we're working on. It's not, sales mentality, ABC, always be closing. I got you on the phone, in 30 seconds to, 15 minutes, I'm going to close you. No. You're trying to build up rapport. You're trying to build the relationship, and then you're talking over time, and you're negotiating the relationship. You're negotiating opportunities. You're negotiating what's going on. You're constantly do that to the next meeting and to the next meeting and to the next meeting. Then eventually something comes out of it, right? So I think it's important for you guys, like we're watching this right now, to really kind of think about that. Is that yes, you're going to get triggered, and that's okay. It's how you deal with it, how you mentally and emotionally kind of work through it, that you're able to reset and kind of go, okay, that was tough. Yeah. Like, whoo, that was a hard situation. What happened? And then come back and be compassionate yourself. It's okay to feel that way. Right? It's okay to do that, debrief, and then get back into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually brings us to the point of modern days communications. And, I believe it's changing a lot for the past year, where it's kind of whether you adopt technologies or you die. And especially in terms of communications now, Zoom and other platforms that are available for us. And, we don't have a choice pretty much, even though it opened up so many doors. Like we are the other side of the world, and yet we're able to communicate. But at the same time, we lose a lot of conversational cues by going online, by having this kind of meetings, simply because I'm seeing just static image of you, kind of a static image of you, right? The audio is compressed. Like I do not feel you in a sense, like your body language. I just see the upper part. All these cues help to navigate the communication, help to sense the dynamic that's happening, emotional dynamic, conversational dynamic at a much better level. And not even considering the amount of stress that people are undergoing in the daily lives, financial instability, like God knows what's happening tomorrow, let alone, not even thinking about next month or whatnot, people changing their lives, there's no jobs and so on and so forth. So how do you think pandemic changed communications and, some of the things that you noticed in the past year?
Well, I think one is like you're talking about, the personal engagement and the physical level of being in their environment, right? Where people feel comfortable. If it's at a restaurant, if it's at their office, at their home, whatever that may be, if you're in their physical environment, there's a familiarity to them that they feel comfortable, right? But now if they're on video, some people don't feel comfortable on video. So you're dealing with that on top of whatever the negotiation scenario is. So sometimes trying to feel that out, where they see. Now, don't get me wrong, that was the initial, as people did the repetitions. And I mean, a lot of us, and I'm sure anyone watching this, you did, like, if you're in any type of office environment, you did calls after calls, video after video for months. By the time you did the 10th or 15th one, there was it was common hat. You're like, whatever, this is the next Zoom call. I've got 5 today, and you're just banging them out. Now you're comfortable. Now you're your normal self. But I think at the first little bit, there was the, okay, I'm on camera. Does the microphone, is the light all good? Okay. How do I look? Does my shirt all look good? And then I think it was like, I'm wearing a suit and tie and everything looks good, to now I'm wearing my golf shirt. Now I'm wearing maybe just a t-shirt and a nice t-shirt. And it kind of goes to, now, who are you really? Right. And now the comfortability. And we have to know that sometimes when people are in conversations, we call them masks or face or different ones. They're representation of who they want to perceive as and see as, to the point where they feel comfortable. Now they're their true self. Right. And sometimes you see that, especially with our lines of technology communication, there's a representation of who they want to be perceived as who they are. But then when you start to get into real deep negotiations and the real issues start coming up, now you see their real kind of colors and who they are. And now you're starting to really negotiate and work with that person. So I think that through technology, it really kind of changed that. It gave another layer of somehow the representation of who they need to be, right? And who they need to be on camera. Like, oh my God, I'm in Zoom. Everyone's watching me, right?
Well, there is always a fear of you being recorded. You don't see this, and also if you're working from home and you have to do like sales calls, and before that you were working in the office with your colleagues, you're having a rough day. It's hard. You want to take a break. Normally you would go and have a small banter with your colleagues to sort of recharge, replenish, and now for a lot of people it's not available, and it adds additional stress layers. And it seems to me that the coping strategies are not yet well incorporated in day-to-day kind of professional lifestyle right now. A lot of, you could see, especially people who have to communicate a lot through text, because text is really ambiguous. Like whenever we're texting someone or emailing, it's almost guaranteed that it's going to be taken negatively. Like,
and why is that?
well, it's simply because because of the negativity bias. Like the part of our brain, the amygdala, that's responsible for the emotional processing, approximately 75% of it is dedicated to processing negative emotions. So when we read something and we don't have a visual representation of the person that we're talking to, we tend to assume the worst tone, the aggressiveness, or some sort of a fear-based communication. So it's really crucial to have a style of communication that will soften the words that you communicate through emails or through messaging, and that, I believe, is also a crucial moment, because that's what I'm seeing in negotiation practice community. There were a few conflicts in the community happening, and for me, what I'm seeing is, okay, there is a conflict in negotiation practice community. It's got to be interesting. But what actually happens, people get hooked by emotions, and miscommunications happen because it's more convenient sort of to distance yourself, to hide yourself behind the wall of text, and then extrapolate based on the response that you get from the text. But we miss so much if we just communicate through text. And there is a debate, but the ratio is 7:38:55. So 7% of communications happening through a voice, 38 is through tone of voice, and then 55 is body language. So we're looking really at the tip of the iceberg when we're communicating through text, and that's where a lot of miscommunications happening.
For sure.
So that actually,
it's also beliefs. And when you're looking at text, email, text, social media messaging, all that, the person's coming with their own perception, right, of how they're going to read it. Like if Eugene sent me a message, say a text, my belief structure on that moment, that time, or what I do, and I read it, I'm interpreting, versus being present with you. And you said, hey, we need to deal with this situation. I now know tonality. I could get your tone. You might not be concerned or aggressive about it. Like, hey, I think we need to work on this issue. It might be softer and gentler, but if I read that in text, we need to deal with this issue, I might think it's confrontational, right? Because I'm reading it in text and it's my own belief of what that's being said. So like you said, there's a lot of sub context that's not being thought of or felt in an actual text message or whatever that may be. So as we as negotiators are working to collaborate with people, we have to be mindful of that, is how that person's going to read this. What's the most negative way they potentially could read this, and how can I soften it more?
Yeah, so that's the additional strategy layer that you have to think about when communicating through text. And you, of course, we do have a certain goal in mind where we're communicating through text. Personally, when I'm dealing with my clients and in my business, the goal of the text is to get to the phone call, or to get to the to the conversation, to the real conversation, or to smoothen out some of the details. But there is so much information you could gather just from 5 minutes of conversation, rather than just typing for 5 minutes whatever you have to communicate. So the preference should be always, especially in business, to get on the phone, to get on the Zoom, to
I would say it depends, right? Because, you know, each individual has their own way of conversation, right? And the way they do it. Some people are extremely busy, as you and I know, Eugene. Like, getting on the phone for them is inconvenient. So now they're already an emotional response to that phone call, even though there might be a good topic or, discussion, they're already coming in a negative state. So you already have to deal that, where a text or email might be more comfortable with them because they're a high paced, fast person individual that needs to answer quickly and they feel more comfortable. So you also have to understand the environmental, aspects of it, right? If you are doing it, and this is why negotiation for all of us, right, as we're doing this, we have to master the skills on all platforms, in person, on phone, through text, through email, how to negotiate in a way that's collaborative. Now, don't get me wrong. The ultimate goal, of course, the best scenario is have someone in front of you to be able to negotiate, because you can have all the whole environment, the contextual of what they're physically doing, their mentally, their emotion. You can see if there's, they're engaged, if there's things going on with their body language, you can see all that. But we have to be able to understand the different levels to be able to do that and negotiate, because sometimes it's more comfortable for our counterpart, right, to be able to negotiate through email, through text, whatever that may be. I mean, we've got WhatsApp and all these different other, applications where people want to go secure communication, to text, to email, to phone, like all this stuff. You can't just try to say, okay, I'm not going to talk to him, or I'm not going to negotiate on text. I have to get him on the phone. I have to get him on the phone, because that could now cause, an adversary, as we call it, or conflict already, right, in the conversation. And you're like, well, why did that go so bad? And why did it not go well? Well, maybe it was because not the right environment for them.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, it all depends on the environment and the framework of communications, and what is it that you're dealing with. And Brandon, I would like to ask you about the conflict resolution. We talked about this with you before, and it seems to me that you have some fascinating experience in conflict resolution. And can you talk a little bit about that and your experience?
Yeah. So I used to work physical security back in 97. Right. And a lot of the training that we had to go through was de-escalating a situation, right? Being able to de-escalate someone that's gone to an emotional state, right, and how to get them back into their own body and be able to be grounded to have a conversation. Because a lot of times when people get in an emotional state, they're not thinking, they're not logically thinking, they're emotionally reacting. Right. And then what happens is it's hard to get them to listen or hear or understand the conversation, because they're so into how this is affecting them. And understandable, something happened, there's an event happened that triggered this emotional response, right? So you have to kind of understand that. So some of the techniques and strategies that I've learned over the time was, first and foremost, slow down your voice, slow down the conversation, keep the delivery of the information that you're providing very clear and short, because then it helps them to focus. If you give them multiple things, I want to take the car and go get groceries and do all this, and you're doing all these different things, they can't think, they can't logically break that down, they can't do a mathematical formula. So they're doing what? And then they attack, or they go back in their primal instinct, versus I would like to take the car, right? Very clear, very short, so they can kind of go and focus on that. What did you just say? I would like to take the car. Oh, okay. Where are you taking the car? What's going on? I'd like to go grab groceries. Right. And you can see I'm going nice and slow and taking pace, right, with them. So then I can see if they're coming down. A lot of times when someone's starting to connect with you, you can see them start to de-escalate emotionally. And now they're starting to ask questions. What do you mean? And now you're starting to engage. You're starting to see that collaboration. And now you can start to, and then you can kind of, once they kind of get the point where they're starting to ask better questions, then you can ask them and connect with them. How are you doing? We learn labels. It appears that that really upset you. And depending on where they are with their emotions, they might actually come back with, now, yeah, that really upset me because of X, Y, and Z. And now you get to understand what happened and how that affected them. But to de-escalate them is the first stage. If you don't, and you start asking questions like, say Eugene, I set him off because I said, "Oh, your microphone, it's wow, I can't believe that's an older microphone." And then Eugene gets responsive. I just bought this one, right? And he gets triggered. Now if I go and go, "Oh, that upset you?" Of course that upset me. And then now he keeps reacting versus, "Oh, it's very slow, very concise. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that, Eugene. Yeah, you got to be sorry. When did you get your microphone? Oh, I just recently got it." And take it slow, right? And then Eugene will come down in pace, and then we can start talking, right? And then when I see Eugene start to settle, breathing, tempo of their response, their aggressiveness or energy around the conversation, when I see that come down, then I can emotionally engage, right? Then I can start saying, "It sounds like that really upset you." Or as we talk about softeners, "I'm really sorry, Eugene. Sounds like that really upset you, what I said about your microphone." And then what happens is now Eugene will come back. "Yeah, you know what? I spent a lot of money. I did a lot of research. I really thought this microphone out. And now we're collaborating. Now I'm understanding." And this is where comes the empathy, is really listening to what was that about, how much work, Eugene put into getting that perfect microphone for him. And really my initial comment insulted you, right? Unknowing to me, but it really affected Eugene. And this is the thing of the negotiator. We got to understand how we affect people with our conversations and what we say, and then de-escalating through, like you said, through that response, is how to bring them down. Because some things you'll say unknowingly could bring up something. It's not intentionally. It's not like I said, "Well, Eugene, that microphone is terrible." And I knew Eugene did a lot of work, and I was going after Eugene. It could have been just something soft for me going, "Oh, this looks like an older microphone," and not intentionally to hurt or harm or cause conflict. It would just might be a comment because I might have just bought mine. I saw his older model on the website, and it could be just, something that's just inquiring, but it could trigger something unknowing that could have reacted and escalated. So I wanted to draw that out a little bit because we all deal with it. We all get in a situation where, like, what just happened? Like, oh my God, that was just an innocent comment. Like, how did that go from 0 to 100 in a second? Like, what just happened? And see, these are some of the tools to help when you notice that, to start to kind of bring them back down and then find out, okay, what just happened?
It appears you love my microphone, Brandon.
I do. I love these XLR.
Well, it actually brings us to I guess the most important point is, how do you not get hooked by this negative emotional dynamics? How do you not react? What are some of the strategies that you found to be useful in your life?
Well, I think one thing is you're gonna have to know that you have to call it out in the what they call the elephant in the room, or be self-aware that you're gonna be triggered. There's gonna be times and situations, and be compassionate with yourself first and foremost. Second, when it does happen, debrief, write a journal, kind of say, and really self-evaluate what just happened, right? And ask yourself, and I learned this skill, and I know Eugene knows this, is I learned this skill is ask yourself really good questions. What just happened? Why did I get upset? What was the emotion I felt? Why did I feel that emotion? Then your mind starts to search for answers. Right? It doesn't mean you're going to come up with the answers, but your mind will start to search. And all of a sudden you'll remember a time. I'll remember the time when I was 5 years old and the guy, kicked my bike over. That really upset me. And this guy talked about a bike, and it just triggered me. And now I remember that incident. And I'll be honest with you guys, communication, negotiation, all is personal development. It's all going to come back to, understanding yourself as you go through this, because it's going to challenge you. And so these things are going to come up, And then you're just going to have to be able to work through them. And that's what I've had to do, is work through these triggers and these communication points and see how I can be better and heal some of these things. So that when I go into the next negotiation about that topic, now I'm more grounded versus reactive. And we come across these things. All right. So again, just to recap, you got to be aware that you're going to run into triggers. You're going to run into things that are going to set you off emotionally. Be compassionate with yourself to be able to say, okay, hold on. This is crazy. Like I've got an emotion response. I need to step away and deal with it. Debrief, like ask yourself good questions to be able to evaluate it. And then look at, how do you need to heal that? Now, when you get into that action, when you get into that response, some of the things that Eugene and I have talked about was breathing, right? Getting yourself from a sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state, right? Some tools are breathing, 4 of 4, 5 of 5, and then basic means inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and and inhale for 4 seconds. So it's that kind of that box,
Also known as box breathing.
Right.
Yeah.
So you do that. Some do it 4, some do it 5, some do it 7. The one I heard that one was from the Marines. The Marines do that, and snipers do that when they're about to do their shot. They do 4 of 4 to settle their breathing, right? And over there, going to engage in the situation. Drinking water, putting water in your mouth, right, and holding and swishing around will actually help to get you into a parasympathetic state, because in a parasympathetic state, your digestion starts. So your body wants to go from a fight flight where your heart races and your body's ready to run to now, oh, we're going to eat. So it starts to slow down. So these are some tools to think about. Like if you kind of feel like, oh my God, have a drink of water, like have, a bottle of water or a glass of water beside you, drink some water and just breathe. One of the techniques Chris Voss talks about is the late night DJ voice, slowing down your talking and your breathing. That's not only going to help your counterpart and the person you're talking, it also helps you. The more you slow down, the more you're going to start to breathe. And so, Eugene, this is a great conversation. It's going to help me kind of slow myself down. And again, get me in a parasympathetic state. So now I can breathe, think what just happened, and now get back into the negotiation. So those are some tips and tricks.
Very interesting. I never heard about the glass of water, but it all makes sense, because not only you engaging your parasympathetic system by activating digestion and salivation and everything that kind of moves you towards the parasympathetic states, but it also brings your awareness towards your face, right? Because you're gonna wash your mouth and so on, and then you swallow it and you feel it. So for the next maybe 5-10 seconds, you become present. So right. You're disengaging this energy that was going, to, oh my God, what just happened? So in the past, towards the present moment, and recalibrating this way, which is really fascinating. And it all comes down to self-awareness. And I think this is the biggest roadblock to actually becoming a better communicator. Self-awareness is crucial. That's where everything stems from. After that, if you're not aware of the dynamic that's happening, you cannot engage in active listening. You're not aware of other things that are happening around you. You're not noticing clues that's happening in real time. So how do we actually improve the self-awareness skills? And of course, journaling is very important. So you're ruminating on these ideas, and therefore creating a sort of a space or retrospection where when you uncover some of the layers that are hidden within you. What are some of the things that we could do to improve self-awareness?
Well, I mean, you've talked about, and I've heard it in different contexts, as kind of radical responsibility. Like what responsibility did I have in that engagement, that conversation, that negotiation? What did I come to it? What did I influence? Doesn't matter what, because a lot of times we go, well, Eugene did this and Eugene did that and he did this. Okay, but what did I do? How did I change the conversation? What was my accountability on that? Because every engagement is 50-50. Right? We all have our own responsibility, our own emotions, and everything that we bring to the table, and our past baggage. All that is our responsibility. And then the other counterpart person we're talking about, they have their responsibility. So what did I bring to the table? So radical responsibility of, okay, what did I do that didn't make that conversation go well? Or what did I do to make it go well? right? And being accountable. And when you start to see, and I see this a lot, going, they did that, that's where you got to catch yourself going, okay, but what did I do? How did I change that? They were getting upset. How did I create that? How did I make it a safe space for them? And this is where it comes to asking yourself very good questions. I think it's key. It's so key to self-evaluation, is asking yourself questions: who, what, where, when, how, when, like kind of the interview style. You can do that for yourself. It now starts to open doors. It starts to open up, the, know thyself type psychology of, oh crap, like I did that. That was me. They answered that and I didn't listen, and I didn't respond to this one main issue, right? Whatever, because I wasn't listening. Okay, I need to listen better, right? And we start to kind of evaluate how we are as, communicators, support people, conversational salespeople, whatever that may be. And we start to learn the skills that we are really good at and ones we need to work on. There's times, and I'll be honest with you, you're in sales, you're not listening, right? When I first got into sales, I'm not listening. I was kind of thinking, what's my next step? What's my next thing I'm going to do? What's the next technique? Versus being present, because I wasn't listening. I was thinking about my next action, right? So a lot of times when I had to do that, I had to self-evaluate, going, why? Why am I doing that? Well, because I'm looking to get the deal. I'm looking at the sale. I need to get the money. I have to meet my quota. My boss is going to do that. So all this leverage I'm bringing to the conversation, and debriefing, I'm going to go, great. Look at the 50% that I'm bringing on my partner here in the conversation. I'm doing all that to them. I'm putting all that stress on them when they're just thinking about X, whatever that may be. And I'm not even listening to X. I'm telling them I'm making them feel that they need to close this deal. They need to sell to me right now. They need to do that. And that's my responsibility. Right. And when you do that, that radical, accountability, you kind of go, wow, like I can't believe how much pressure I'm putting on the person I'm talking to, knowing it or unknowing, consciously or subconsciously. And subconsciously, a lot of times we don't know what we don't know, right? Until later we go back and go, oh my God, am I really doing that? And then you do it the next meeting, you go, yep, check, I'm doing it, because now you've identified it. I can't believe I'm pressuring this person, but why? Because it's the sale. Then you hear yourself in the next conversation say, yeah, so what's your timeline? Do you need to get this week? And you're going, I'm pressuring them on timeline. I can see it. Now you can highlight it. How do I make that better? How do I make them feel more comfortable? Right? And now you start to evaluate. And I think that's so important to be a better negotiator, and be able to be a better communicator, is a self-evaluation portion of it, and the debriefing, and just being aware of your 50%. What's your 50% in the conversation?
Absolutely. And some interesting things when you said, like, how much pressure am I putting on this person? So in essence, in order to put pressure on someone else, you have to feel it first. So this is the emotional dynamic that's happening within you, and that's what you bring into the table, and forcing other person to feel that way. So perhaps when you're becoming, the more self-aware you become, the more tip of the scales you get. It's not 50% and 15 no more. It's probably 60 or maybe even 70 to 30. Because now, as you're aware of all the things that you bring to the table, and you consciously practice, communication styles that move conversation towards collaboration, towards the open space, towards the trust, optimism, right? Towards the courage and the curiosity of where it might go, where it could go, right? Then the more you have to unload this baggage from your shoulders. And then when you show up in the conversation and negotiation, in any interaction, then you know that you don't contribute to this. And that's when other person, of course, on the other person, the counterpart will have some weight on the shoulder, some sort of attention. And that's when this tension comes to the table, but you don't have it. So you don't react to this. And therefore, you're able to explore it in a more coherent, in a more conscious way, this pressure, these triggers. So it all starts with negotiating with yourself. And that's how I like to approach it in my sessions. Like, you gotta start negotiating with yourself. And I suppose that's what you mean, or partly, when you say self-awareness and self-management, and some of these things that you could do in order to understand yourself better, in order to calm down this critical voice in your head, calm down this tension, this anxiety, these thought patterns that are running in your head, that actually derails the conversation, that actually overload your cognition. And because working memory is limited, there is a debate about how much of a working memory we have, but some scientists says 7 plus minus 2 bits of information we could process any given time, where the long-term memory has no known limits. So in order to actually offload the working memory to long-term memory, you're gonna have to have few of these memory slots dedicated to processing the communication between long-term and short-term memory. So if it's busy by processing your own emotions, by your own stress, your own tension, then you wouldn't have enough resources to understand your counterpart, understand the dynamic, to process the information in a more coherent way. And what I'd like to point out in my session is that Chris Voss mentioned it in his book, that whenever they deal with terrorists, there are 6 FBI agents in a room listening to conversation. It just shows how much information we're actually missing from any given interaction. How much resources need to be attributed to have a fuller picture of the situation. So in this case, the teamwork, if you're working on a team, could be tremendously helpful if you're working as a team. Like if you at the same level of negotiation sort of prowess and understanding, and then you helping move the conversation forward, a lot of the times you miss a lot of clues, and team or team member, or having actually a recording of your conversations could be of your sales speech could be tremendously helpful to actually look back at it and see, oh, this is what I did, like this is what I said. Well, why is it? Like, is it the most efficient way to communicate, or there could be something that I could improve upon, not to bring it, or not to bring this dynamic, in my future engagements.
I want to add something to just, and you briefly mentioned, is that they have 6 FBI agents, but they're also, the 7th is the recording that they will review after, right? And go over it, because all 6 might have heard information, and then when they review the recording, they go, oh my God, like, did you guys hear that? And they're like, I missed that one point, right? And there's different, I basically want to say, different views of a negotiation, and then even debriefing, going back through this, you're going to learn something different. You might learn something new.
Absolutely. And it actually brings us to the concept of flow states. I'm sure you're familiar with this. And can you give like a little breakdown of what is it for you, and how do you see it in terms of negotiations and communications? How does flow works for you?
Yeah, I mean, the way I've seen flow states for myself is when you're in, they call it the zone, right? Like, I've heard that term, when you're like, everything's going well, you're hitting all your marks, like it's like the best negotiation, like you're just waiting for the lottery ticket to hit, like everything's going extremely well. And it's just this process of flow, is everything's just hitting. You're listening, you're understanding the person, they're giving you like great information, they're communicating, you're able to ask good questions, you're able to, calibrated questions, and how does that work? How would you like to do that? And it's just, you're in a flow state. And by the time you're done, like I've been in what you call the flow state, where you're sitting there and you've gone through an hour, and it's like, wow, that just seemed like 15 minutes. It was such a great conversation, such a great, collaborative negotiation. And at the end, you're kind of like, everyone's happy, like, oh my God, how do we move forward? What do we need to do next? And you can feel the energy. And I think over time and distance, as you start to practice these things, what happens is you see this flow state come up more, because you're in the zone. You've got your techniques, you've dusted off your skills. You really kind of got it in your subconscious mind, that you don't have to think about it, right? It's now just, subconsciously, you're just doing it. And now you get into this, state where your physical state is good, right? You're emotional, your body's up, your shoulders are up, you're feeling good. Your emotional state now, matches that. So now you're happy, you're really thinking, you're passionate about what you're talking about. And then now you're able to work through the negotiation. And I think the flow state is something Tony Robbins talks about, and I think I really believe this, and I've heard it in different scenarios, is that motion equals emotion, right? So if you're not in an actual flow state, you got to see, how does your body work best in your best flow state? Do you have to stand up? Do you have to have your shoulders back? Do you have to have your head up? What is that for you to get your body into that emotional state? And then how do you combine the emotion to that? What's the emotion? What do you have to think about? What do you have to be emotionally and mentally in that state? And then now when you're in those two states, now being able to go into a negotiation gives you better results of getting into the flow state faster to be able to do that. Now, some people have like what they call power moves and all that, where they do one move, a breathing technique, whatever that may be, that triggers that. Right. So they stand up, I know my buddy Joel has one of these things before he goes take his exam. He stands up in Superman, right? The Superman pose, right? Hands up, breathes up, right and strong. And then he goes in, puts him into that flow state where now his mind knows we're going to go ready to test. I'm ready. Right. And now he's able to do it. So same thing with negotiation. You think you're going to have a tough negotiation or you're just not feeling it. You got to put your body into that state, which then puts your mental, emotional in that state. And then when you go in, you're preparing yourself. That's a preparation. And now it's easier. I'm not going to say it's 100% each and every time, but it's easier to get in that state. And now you've got that preparation that now it 80% now can be better versus if you go in kind of like, oh, I got another negotiation. Hopefully this is going to work out. The potential for that not to go well now is higher because you're just not in the right state. So that's how I look at the flow state and look at preparation to get into it, especially each and every time, because sometimes you're in a negotiation, you prepare for the negotiation, you're in it. Sometimes you don't know that you're in a negotiation and you have to kind of, like I do one with the kind of breathing and you can kind of hear it. And now I'm in it. I'm in the flow state. I'm ready to go. My energy's up. I'm kind of there. And that could happen where someone goes, hey, Brandon, I want you to tell me about this. And now I'm like, oh, great. I'm in a negotiation. Okay, so let's talk about this. And I get myself in that state, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would love you to sort of talk a little bit more. I know we got a few minutes left here. How do you personally prepare for negotiations? What are some of your strategies, some of the things that you do before making the sales call or before talking or having this difficult conversation with your grandma or your family member? Like, what are some of the things that you do?
So first and foremost, I do research on the topic, on the discussion. If I know it, on the individual, on the company, organization, try to collect as much information as I can. What's going on with the person, what's going on with the individual, what's happening. I try to do that first and foremost. Second is, what's my hypothesis on this conversation? Is it going to go well? Is it going to go poorly? What's the roadblocks that I'm potentially going to run into? What's the successes I might get out of it? Try to figure that out first. And I call them hypothesis versus assumptions. I don't want to assume Eugene knows this. I want to go, I think he knows this. I need to find out if he does. I need to understand if this is the case. Now it's curiosity versus assumption is just, I assume he knows that I'm going to pass on and move on. I need now to have this, thought that he has and curiosity that I need to find out this. So that's my preparation. Then I get myself prepared, right? Body, mind, make sure I have enough sleep, hydration, make sure I'm comfortable. And that's my preparation to go in the meeting. Now, I won't go into negotiation when I'm not prepared physically, late at night, tired, fatigued. I just won't do it. I'll reschedule it because you got to be at that right state because you don't know if it's going to be a 5-minute conversation or a 5-hour conversation. You don't know. So you got to be in that state that I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm open. I can do it. I'm clear, and sometimes you'll deal with, like for me, I might have a bad call. I'm not going to go in a negotiation right after if I know I need to reset. And if that call was really hard, it was really tough, a lot of emotions in it, and I need a break, I'm taking a break to reset. Go for a walk, reset, whatever that may be. And these are the preparation steps and knowing myself where I sit before I go into that negotiation. If I'm not doing that checklist, I know my negotiation's not going to go well. All right. So again, preparation on the environment, on the individual, preparing myself, right? Looking at what I know from the counterpart, the person I'm talking to, and what's my hypothesis going in, what I good or bad, both sides, and then going in with curiosity. So that's how I prepare.
Wow, thank you for sharing. It's would love to dive a little bit deeper into curiosity and how what kind of effects it has on conversation and how to cultivate the genuine curiosity, perhaps some other time with you. Before we jump off, for people who are interested, where do they find you to get like coaching sessions from you, to work with you one-on-one? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way right now is LinkedIn. A lot of people are reaching out to LinkedIn. Just it's the easiest. LinkedIn.com/IN and my name, Brandon Krieger. Right. You can just connect with me there, send me a message, mention that you saw me in this video, and then you just have some questions and connect with me. And then, yeah, I've been doing a lot of one-on-one coaching lately, and it's been great because so many people deal with so many different situations. Negotiating could be personal, could be professional, could be something that a big purchase, whatever that may be. I've been helping them through that, like you have, Eugene. It's just helping them to understand their skill, their strategy, and getting them to go through it.
Well, 100%. I mean, whoever having trouble with communication or with professional development and sales, I would highly recommend to reach out to Brandon. He has a tremendous experience and helping people every week. Where you can find him actually on Slack community, negotiation practice community, just outreach, and you can get a gist of what Brandon is talking about and how he's structuring his coaching sessions over there. Well, thank you so much, Brandon, for coming today. It's been a really powerful conversation, and I know there's a lot to unpack here, and I know I'm going to go over this recording a few times to learn things that I haven't caught up on during this conversation. So thank you for coming, Brandon, and
thank you. This was awesome. It was awesome to have this conversation and share this with your community as well, so they can learn and keep going to that next stage, right, of negotiation.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, thank you so much. It's been Eugene and Brandon today, and speak to you later.